Welcome back to Auntie Julie's reading room. So glad you could join me again. Now, in our last video, we broke down a South Carolina career and college ready standards. I have to say it slow because I don't want to miss the C's. So this standard was taken from the third grade language arts curriculum. It's RL 9.1. We have already broken it down and defined the concepts, and now we're ready to teach. Today, we are going to use that standard to navigate a lesson through the ELA framework within a balanced literacy classroom. So, are you ready? Let's get it. So just to refresh your memory, we took the document offline, right, where we found the third grade standard, RL 9.1. We went through, did our little research, and we broke it down for ourselves. And further to that, we have our little structure where we further broke it down for our students. We came up with the concepts that need to be taught to the students for them to fully understand, as well as the skills that they would use. We came up with our learning intentions as well as our I can statements. Then we went ahead and broke down these I can statements to our students. And so now we are ready to teach. So the balanced literacy ELA framework begins with a read aloud, then move into shared reading, and then we have word study, then our reading workshop, and then our writing workshop. So of course I would have written this up on my board already. I said, good morning class. Today we will be learning about figurative language. How does it work from my end? This end? Okay. Figurative language. At the end of the day when we're finished learning, right, and I ask you, what have you learned? You should be able to tell me that I can, and they go through the I can statements. Now, even if you have written all of this on the whiteboard, you could say, okay, we may not have time to go through the second I can statement, but definitely we'll be doing some work around this first one, right? And then you go into, and then that's when you do the breaking down and so on and so forth. Good. After that, you put that aside, right? You are now going to begin your read aloud. Now, if you're going to use a text for your read aloud, let me see if I can. Let's try this one. It's a text for your read aloud. First, you would present the book. Okay, for our read aloud today, we'll be reading The Power of One. Just by looking at the book, what do you think it's going to be about? Right, and they'll give you their ideas and so on, and just talk about it. They'll tell you it's going to be about a girl, she's one, or maybe she has this one little flower in her hand, whatever they have. Of course, you will note what they say, and then you say, okay, let's find out. In the same way, if you're using a document, right, as is we're doing today, I will be using a Word document, and I'll be using it for the entire lesson, integrated across the entire lesson. Good, so it's a document, usually have a story or whatever it is, right? So normally if read aloud, they don't have the text. This is their opportunity to observe you while you navigate a text as a proficient reader. Good. So what I would do is write the title of the story on the board. Okay, My Big Brother. My Big Brother Donnie. What do you think this is going to be about? And you question to develop a little background knowledge or get them to start thinking about what you will be reading. If nothing is coming forward, anybody that has a big brother, how do you feel about your big brother? Tell me something, and you have your talk. Good. So now you will listen to me as I read, and I will begin. I wish I was fast as my big brother Donnie. He is a cheetah on the basketball court. Before each game, he is so excited, he's about to explode. The basketball court seems to be calling his name. If you notice, this text is based on the concept within the standard, which is ideal, but it's not always possible for read aloud or shared reading. But definitely, it must be for when you get to the reader's workshop. Good. So I said, do you hear anything coming out? I mean, we have been learning about figurative language. Have you heard any of the figurative language coming out? And if you realize that they're not really they weren't paying attention, you read it again. I wish I was as fast as my big brother Donnie. Do we hear any figurative language coming out? Yes, what is it? Oh, it's a simile. Okay. Very good. How do you know it's a simile? Because remember, we want them to identify as well as explain. How do you know it's a simile? Right? And the main characteristics of simile is that it uses what? As or like. It uses as or like. Excellent. How about this one? He is a cheater on the basketball court. Right? What's that one? It's a metaphor. Why is it a metaphor? How do you know? Right? It didn't use as or like. And it is saying that what? He, Donnie, is a cheater. Right? Good, a cheetah, how we would say it in the American accent. Right now, before each game, he's so excited, he's about to explode. And of course, you raise your voice here because we also want them to learn that he was excited talking about his brother. And remember, we have the conventions that we have to pay attention to. So you see why it's important to understand what needs to be brought up within the standards, so you can at any moment in time, any teaching opportunity you get, you utilize it to do what you need to do as a teacher, right? Okay, the basketball court seems to be calling his name. What figurative language is that? Of course, that's personification. Why do you think this is personification, right? Because the basketball can't talk, so it would not be able to call out his name, and he's just an object that doesn't have life and all that good stuff. Good? Now, I don't have to go through all of this for a read aloud. Once you have brought out a few points, because remember, it still has to work within the time. Now, this was what I used for my read aloud. They didn't have a copy of it at the time. Now I'm moving into shared reading. So what I do is hand out a copy to each of my students, or where they could work within the group. So, okay, boys and girls, I've started reading the story already, and you have seen where I demonstrated using my punctuation marks for fluency, and where we talk about it and think about what was happening. Now we're going to read together to practice these same skills, right? So you hand out the sheets and everybody has a copy, and you continue. Now, shared reading is where the teacher shares a reading with the student. So I would do something like this, right? During the game, many exciting events happen. There are times when the ball is like a magnet attracted to his hands, right? And I would call on a pair of students to read the next sentence, and they would read like, Donnie is a protective mother cub when guarding the ball. Protective, I want to say, what is that? What does that mean? Bring out the vocabulary. It's a teaching moment. Protective, what do you think that means? And of course, they would tell you whatever they're thinking, and you guide them into getting the meaning based on the context. Good? Okay, and then I would read the next sentence, and then another pair read the next sentence, and so on and so forth. So that is the shared reading. And you use opportunities to teach whatever concepts that are coming out. All right, so we'll go to the other one. The energy level in the room is like a power plant working overtime. Donnie kills me with his athleticism. Athleticism. I would usually write that word on the board. It's quite big, so I'll write it on the board. Athleticism. What do you think that means? You'd be like, All right, let's try to break it up, right? Athleticism. And you come up with your syllable. Good. Shared reading is done. We're moving into word study. Word study can come from this very same document. Very same document. For example, boys and girls, I want you to go up back to paragraph 1. Can we read that together? And then we begin. I wish I was as fast as my big brother Donnie. He is a cheater on the basketball court. Excellent. Very good reading. Now I want you to circle the word basketball. So of course then I would write the word on my whiteboard, BASKETBALL. Basketball. What can you tell me about the word basketball? And of course they would tell you like something you used to play a game or whatnot. Okay? Somebody would say, oh, I could get 2 words from basketball. Right? I said, okay, what are the 2 words? Then you will circle them probably. Basket and ball. Excellent. So there are 2 words. Anybody can tell me what we call a word that is made up of 2 words. And if they don't know, okay, it starts with C. It's 3rd grade, so they possibly will remember, or as well as they may not remember. Someone says, oh, I know, compound words. That's right, right? C-O-M-P-O-U-N-D, compound words. So if I ask you to explain what compound words are, what would you tell me? right? What is a compound word, right? Compound word is a word that is made up of two words. You could say two or more, but it's third grade, so we're looking at two words, right? And then this is where you're building your word study. Do we know of any other words that are made up of two words? And they could come up with all kinds of words, right? You could say butter, fly. Good. They could say pop, corn. Good. They could say shoelace. Right? They could say, give me, I can't even think of some compound words right now. But you get the general idea, right? So basketball is listed among that. So let's put that, since nothing is coming to mind right now. Right? We could also have, let's see, a butterfly. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with my mind right now? So basically here you're building content for your word study, right? And compound words falls under a standard within the curriculum. I guarantee you that. So right there and then, students will have, they would normally have their notebooks on the go, and while I am writing, they are writing too, right? Or you could leave the writing for later. But for me, we do it as we go along because I don't want to have to go to reading workshop and then come back to this, right? So of course they will have that. And within this, I would give them, okay, go ahead and you will find and write two other compound words, but show me the word parts, right? Right away, they are taught and they're assessed. Now later, or maybe tomorrow, if they don't get it quite clearly, meaning that they're taking too long to do this, and of course you just go through it since it's actually just an introduction, right? Tomorrow you could revisit and you come back with your chart and more examples and so on. But you just want to make sure you include the component and make learning connected. So there we have read aloud, share reading, and word study. All right, now this takes us to our reading workshop part of the lesson. Now this is where the bulk of exploring the concept begins, right? Now it has a mini lesson component, right? The mini lesson is where the concept is defined and introduced. If it is done this way, then when it gets to the mini lesson in the reading workshop, we just need to redefine the concept or refine the concept, which is usually done. Well, I usually do it by just showing a video, 2 or 3 minute video that further concretize the concept that we have already been exploring. One, breaking down the concept in the beginning, read aloud and the shared reading, then it's a little bit more easy for the students to grab onto, the concept here in the reading workshop. But say for example that none of that was done, no introduction of concept was done in the beginning, neither through the shared reading or the read aloud, then this is the point where you will have you're breaking down keywords, you're breaking down concepts, you're breaking down the standards so students understand what you're about to explore in depth. All right, so apart from the mini lesson, we have independent component within the workshop that includes some work on the concept as well as independent reading and also small group. All right, so continue with the lesson now. We get to our reading workshop. Here I'll just play a 2-minute video about what figurative language is and it will go over the examples and their meaning. Now the reading workshop is explored using the gradual release strategy. Now this strategy has 3 steps: the I do, the we do, and the you do. The I do aspect of it is where after the teacher introduces the concept, this is where the teacher demonstrates answering a question based on the concept or demonstrate whatever skill she wants to see when it gets to the you do part. So we have been talking about figurative language. So usually this is where my technology comes in. I would have a copy up on my whiteboard already up there waiting. So I'll go to my whiteboard and I said, okay, we will be reading this from my whiteboard, and I'll go ahead and read the first paragraph. I wish I was as fast as my big brother, Donnie. He is a cheater on the basketball court. Before each game, he is so excited, he is about to explode. The basketball court seems to be calling his name, right? So I'll give the instruction. When you read a paragraph, you will highlight the different figurative language. And I have it's third grade, so it is highly likely that I'll have my markers. So you will highlight similes in red, metaphor in green, and personification in gray. And of course, on my whiteboard, I would do the same. Let me just show you. It's now displaying it on my whiteboard. Now the students already have a copy, right? And I have my highlighters here. We're going to change the gray to yellow. So the instructions were highlight similes in red, metaphors in green, personification in yellow. I might have changed up the colors, but you get the general idea. So to demonstrate I do, we do, you do, this is how we go. So first it's my turn, so I do. I would read, I wish I was as fast as my big brother Donnie. He is a cheater on the basketball court. Before each game, he is so excited he is about to explode. The basketball court seems to be calling his name. So I would read that out. I said, okay. So let me go sentence by sentence. So the first sentence says, I wish I was as fast as my brother Donnie. I think this is a simile because I see as and as, right? So I'm going to highlight this in red, and I'm going to put a big juicy S there to mean simile, or you could ask them to write it out, right? So I'm going to go to the second sentence, and I'm going to have my green marker. He is a cheater on the basketball court. This is saying that Donnie is a cheater, but it is not using as, or it's not using like. Oh, so this must be a metaphor. Yes, that's right. And I look up at my chart. It's right over there on the chart as reference. So I'm going to put a big fat M to means metaphor. All right. Let me read the rest of my sentence. Before each game, he is so excited, he's about to explode. Oh, well, I don't see any simile here. I don't think this is a metaphor. Okay, let me read on. The basketball court seems to be calling his name. Basketball court calling his name? The last time I checked, basketball court can't talk. So there's no way it could be calling Donnie's name. So this must be personification. Because Miss Livermore said, personification gives life to things that doesn't have life. So I'm going to put a P right here for personification. Good. All right, that was my doing. So class, now it's your turn. Now we're going to work together on the second paragraph. And we're going to be looking at this together. So now we're into the we do aspect of it. All right. So, okay, let's read. And of course, they are going to be the reader. So they read, during the game, many exciting events happen. There are times when the ball is like a magnet attracted to his hands. Donnie is a protective mother cub when guarding the ball. I always allow them to read fully before we dissect. All right. The crowd is bouncing off the walls when he has the ball. The energy level in the room is like a power plant working overtime. Donnie kills me with his athleticism. Wow, good reading, class. Now we're going to highlight together. Of course, they have their paper, right? I'm not going to allow them to go ahead and do this yet. I'm going to say you can go back and do that later. Let's work on this because we have to try to keep up with the time, right? So let's take it sentence by sentence. During the time many exciting events happen, there are times when the ball is like a magnet attracted to his hands. What would you say that is? What are you thinking? And you will take their hands. Okay, I'm thinking it's a simile because I see like, and simile uses as or like. Excellent. What color do we use for that again? We use red. All right, and they light the red there. Okay, let's put a big juicy S. Can highlight the word like. Then we go on. Donnie is a protective mother cub when guarding his ball. What is this sentence actually saying? Because you want to get him to be thinking. He's actually saying that Donnie is a mother cub because he's protecting the ball like how a mother cub would protect her young one, or a mother would protect her cub. You hear me talking foolishness? Okay. All right. Excellent. Sounds good. I like. Okay. So therefore, is that a simile or metaphor? It is a metaphor, Miss Livermore, because it didn't use has or like. Excellent. Excellent. This is where we are. Oh my gosh. Right? And we will put a big M to say that. And then you go on, so on and so forth. Right? So on and continue. So that's the we do aspect of it. Then, still projecting my document, I will say, okay, class, now it's your turn to work this out by yourself using your markers. Then you can go ahead in your groups of 2 and highlight. But before you start highlighting, make sure you read to understand what is said, right? And then while they do this, I'll be going around watching or observing or listening to them as they ask the question, talking out loud, just as I demonstrated. Now, even though this is we have done I do, we do is a you do, because it's done in pairs, this doesn't really count as individual to me. So I usually have an additional activity short where students do their individual thing to kind of give me a feedback as to how much they understand. And this could be used as an exit ticket. It can be just one question on a sheet of paper. All right. All right. So that is the I do, we do, you do. Now during the we do aspect of it, you're going to have students who has not quite gotten the skill. They haven't grasped it yet to actually complete the I do part. This is where you're going to pull your small group, right? While the others work in pairs sort of independently, just pull your small group. Now within your small group of 4 or 5 students, how I usually conduct this is I reintroduce the concept. I had my chart, I bring my chart over to my small group table, and we talk about what figurative language is. We explore the examples that we have been exploring, and we talk about them. You could give them a quick match activity to kind of further concretize the concept before they actually do the independent aspect of it. Now for me, after we do our little small group, I will give them that very same activity that the other students did, because even though they're trying to catch up, we have to get them used to doing the same level of work, because at the end of the day, they all have to sit the same SC ready exam. You know what I mean? Now, reading workshop is not yet finished. All right, we have the reading aspect of a reading workshop. This is where we send students to do their independent reading, right? Now, you can't just say, okay, go ahead and choose just right books. We have to give them an objective to read for. Now, I usually say, so okay, class, we have been exploring figurative language. You've learned about similes and metaphors and personification. Now, as you do your independent reading today, I want you to identify at least 1 or maybe 2 figurative language within the text that you're reading. Okay? Now, remember, it's your independent reading. You will find your own little spot, right? This is where they spread out, choose their books, or continue to read a book that they have. Point out that figurative language are mostly found, or basically found, in non-fiction texts. So they can go to your library, classroom library, and choose a book, and they sit down and they read. Now, during this time, right, remember that small group that you had before? Okay, now it's highly likely that these students need some help with reading. During this time, this is where you have your guided reading aspect of the reading workshop. Now, guided reading is where you guide a student into developing reading skills. In this case, it could be reading comprehension. Having conducted your small group reading, then you would gather your classroom back together. Okay, class. So this takes us to the end of a reading workshop. Of course, you want to tell them what segment of the ELA block that you're on. There's awesome thing to do. Tell them the segment. So we're finished with reading workshop. So you know we have our writing workshop to do. But before we get into our writing workshop, let's quickly recap what we have learned so far. Right? You start to ask them questions, just revise the concepts. You know, what have you learned? If you have time, you could say, what did you find when you read it? Did you find any figurative language from the text that you read today? Because they don't necessarily have to. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff. And then you conclude your reading workshop. And this is where I normally let them get up, take a break, because the ELA block is quite long. So, you know, take a break, stretch, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then we move into our writing workshop. Now, our writing workshop has the same elements as our reading workshop. We have our mini lesson, which usually talks about the concept that we're going to write about. Now, this could be, say, for example, for this week, we're looking at personal narrative. You know, that's where they can make up a story. Of course, you have to explain what a personal narrative is and so on and so forth. Or if we're exploring the writing process, we have to talk about what a writing process is, the steps within the writing process, and so on and so forth. Learning about the writing process for me doesn't come until later on, after we have explored personal narrative and a few other concepts within writing. But for this lesson in particular, remember I told you I was using just one document across the lesson. So we have been talking about figurative language, right? And as we read about figurative language, did you know that we can also write using figurative language, right? Having said that, then I am going to demonstrate how it is done. Still using the gradual release model. The I do, we do, you do. All right? So okay, during my writing lesson, and I did my introduction and so on. So okay, I'm going to write my story. And since we have been learning about figurative language, I'm going to use some similes and metaphors and personifications to write my story. Now my story, the title of my story is, let's see, A Day with Dad. That's a nice topic. I like spending days with Dad. All right, but I have to use some figurative language. Okay. So my dad is as strong as a lion. One day when we went to the park, an old man fell off a bench and my dad lifted, yes, the tense, lifted him up all by himself. Right? Exclamation. All by himself. Did I use a similar metaphor or personification here? Let's see. My dad is as, yes, I did. There is my simile, as strong as a lion, right here. Excellent. That is the I do aspect of it. All right, guys, so that's my part of the story. Let's try to continue this story together. What do you got? Let me see what you got. So we have a simile already. Let's try to put in a metaphor. All right? How could we say it? And they could come up with all kinds of things, right? But then we will continue. The old man, oh my God, look at man, sorry, is a Oh my gosh. Ton of bricks. Oh my gosh. This is probably a terrible storyline, but anyway, let's work with it. The old man is a ton of bricks. As soon as Dad put him to sit on the bench, he fell off again. Probably make no sense there, but they're usually smart enough to come up with better addition to the story, right? And so on. So we do, the old man is a ton of bricks. As soon as Dad put him to sit on the bench, he fell off again, right? So here, what did we use here? The old man is a ton of bricks. And you could say, Miss, we use a metaphor because we said the old man is a ton of bricks. We're actually comparing the old man to the ton of bricks without using as or like. And then, they will continue their stories. Now, depending on what part of the year you are in class, it could be that they continue the story, but give them the option to begin their own story, right? So that will work. So there's the I do, we do, you do, and of course, while when the you do aspect of it is going on, you will of course go around and confer with the students. What are you thinking? Because sometimes they're stuck, they don't know what directions to go. For the ones that are, not quite developed in writing skills, then you would want them to continue this. But if they say, can I write my own? Yes, you can. So while the class continues with their you do aspect of the writing, this is where you also get together your small group. You always have that small group who is not so good at writing yet, especially if this is the beginning of the school year. So you will draft those into a small group, and again, you take your script and you go over it with them and help them to think about ideas. Add to this story. As a matter of fact, I will use this very same story and say, let's add to this story together. Maybe they're not at a point where they can present something originally by themselves. Let them do it with you. Let's finish the story together. And we go through, ensuring that they keep practicing the skill of adding figurative language and so on. All that good stuff. Now, after we're finished writing and everything, and you probably leave the small group for a minute, take a whiff around the room to observe the other students who are working independently, and provide them with a little guide and so on. Good. Again, you bring back the class together, and some of them are dying to share their wonderful stories. So then you afford them some time to share. Not everybody, of course, because by this time, of course, the ELA block has been completed. Good job with that, but still, it's okay if you go over too few minutes. It's usually time for lunch. So take a few minutes and allow one or two to share what they have written so far. Now, if they're not finished with their writing pieces today, guess what? During your writing workshop tomorrow, they could continue with that, and so on and so forth. Well, hope you're walking away with something valuable from this. And remember, nothing is written in stone. Sometimes you just have to plan the lesson based on your students' skills and readiness, right? And their level of abilities. But whatever you do, make sure you plan. In doing so, of course, break down your standards for yourself first so you can understand it to better break it down for your students. This makes you equipped to explore your lesson. That way, any question your student asks you, you're ready to answer because you have already done the research. All right. So thanks for joining me. I hope that explains how you would navigate a lesson through the balanced literacy classroom using the framework. Hope to see you again next time.